This is Michelle Sisler, owner of Keys to Imagination, and today I would like to welcome Sally Ritchie. Sally is a private music instructor and expert in creating games to teach music concepts. She holds a patent on an entire line of games, and today she will share some fun ways to learn and reinforce intervals.
Thank you, Michelle. Last week I had a student in and I asked her to identify an interval for me. And she had this blank look on her face and she said, "Interval? Whoops. I guess I know I had a little work to do again." I teach intervals very carefully, and obviously not every time do I keep them in mind with every student. I have a very large studio and somehow I must have missed a week or two with intervals with her. So we talked about it again and reviewed a little bit, and it was all back. But I would like to share with you the way that I teach intervals, and all of that is dependent on the preparation. If you start them out carefully so that they understand the movement on the staff, they are going to be transferring into interval recognition very easily. What we do with my young students for any age, as soon as they start on the staff, we go to a blank staff paper or we will go to a board like this, and I will put a series of steps on that board. We talk about line and space notes, so we'll talk about this being line, space, and so forth. And then we talk about the fact that line, space are steps. On the staff board, they're next to each other. On the keys, they're next to each other. And if needed, I have them play some steps. However, most of the time what I do is then go back to the staff board and I will make the last one a skip. And you'll notice I moved it over just a little bit, so it's very, very obvious. I then go back to the beginning of this board, or this series, and we'll go line, space, line. Well, what happened to our space note? We skipped it. So then I'll put an X here to show that in this place there was a note that was skipped. If something is skipped on the staff, we skip it on the piano. If we skip a finger, if we're in a 5-finger pattern, if we skip a finger, we skip a key. All it takes is 2 keys with 1 skipped in between. That's a skip. So we go back to this board then, and I erase my marker, and then I make a really big deal about you can't look at what I'm doing. I'm going to try to trick you, so you have to turn around. You can hide your eyes or you can just turn around, but you can't look. So then I go back to this series of steps and skips and put a skip in a different place. Then I tell them they can turn around and look, and here is their weapon. They have to take this marker and they have to try to see if they can find that secret hidden skip. So then they go up, and I make it pretty obvious. It's pretty hard for them to miss it in this first section. So they go up and they do what I did. Mark an X where we skipped. If they need my help, we go back and go line, space. At any rate, I have them do this several times, and then pretty soon I start hiding more than 1 skip in there. And I will make sure they know I am a tricky teacher, and I'm going to be trying to catch you. You pay attention, you'll never get caught. Don't let me catch you. And so we still keep moving with more skips in this series and them trying to find them. Before I let go of this type of instruction, I will move down to ledger line skips. For instance, I'll go from middle C up to E because they get a little confused sometimes when the notes move off the staff. So I make sure before I quit this that I do C and E, or maybe up here, something like that. And see, I'll tell them I'm being extremely tricky this time and you've got to really be careful. And they're always delighted when I can't trick them. If they need my help, of course, I just plain help them. So once they are at this point where they are identifying skips, then we go back to the music. We take out the next song that is going to be assigned to them, and I will give them a pencil and I let them look for those hidden skips in their music. And I let them mark it the same way that we did here. Then we try playing it and I help them with the areas that have skips. They see where they are easily, so that usually ends up pretty much helping them then. But I will let them mark skips in for the next, 2 or 3 weeks even if they need it. I like to not have that be too long. But in the meantime then, as they have learned how to do these next songs, then we move on to a little different type of thing. I still want to drill that so that they are really quick with their recognition of those steps and skips. So at this point, I will get out our Space Place card deck. The Space Place, and I'll show you a little bit about that later, but the Space Place is a game where they can work on steps and skips and intervals. Students are just getting a game board where they fly around the solar system collecting things that are on the planets. I'm not at that point yet though. I just get out the card deck and I say, okay, we have been using these cards a bunch. I'm not sure if they're all here. So will you please help me sort these cards? So we take a look at the first card and, whoa, this is line, line. So line, line. Is that like your steps that went line space? Or is that like your skips that did two of the same things? It is a skip. Let's put all of our skips in this pile. This one is line space. Do you remember when we went line space, line space? Those were steps. So let's put all of our steps in this pile. And we just continue to sort all the cards, and shazam, they are all there. So now we can go ahead and move on to playing the game. By this time though, they have gone through an awful lot of steps and skip identification anyway. I use the Space Place cards because that's what is all in here. Steps, skips, and repeated notes. But you can make your own cards or use whatever you have handy. Then when we go into actually playing the Space Place game, they have a great foundation for this. And this gives them, or gives me, the opportunity to drill all of this information with them. And by the time they have gone through this whole game, even once, you are going to see a huge, huge difference in how quickly they recognize steps, skips, and repeats. And then it's just a short step to go to intervals. When I go back to, when I start working on intervals, I go back to this staff board again, and I will go, okay, this is a step. It is space, line. Space, line is two things. That is a second. Line, space, also two things. Line, space. But if I have this, line, space, line, line, space, line is three things. So we're going to call that a third. And so we move on to calling steps and skips actually what their interval name is. And then by counting them that way, it's a real easy thing to add fourths and fifths. And of course I have other little tricks that I help them with. But then we move on to playing the Space Place level 1, and that's seconds through fifths. So the game is the same, so I don't have to bother teaching them something new. But like I said before with the Premier level, by the time they've played this game once, they are significantly better at interval identification. And because we have seconds through fifths on one side and seconds through octaves on the other side, I can continue this instruction with this game for multiple concepts and a much higher level. I can work on ear training, sight singing. I can work on interval quality very, very easily with these games. So they're very expandable. The kids love them, and I have found it's the perfect way to drill intervals. They're happy, I'm happy, win-win.
Thanks, Sally, for sharing these ideas and helping students with intervals. Order Space Place and subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, specials, and webinars at keystoimagination.com.